In 1917, the theoretical physicist Albert Einstein published his thesis entitled Cosmological Considerations in the General Theory of Relativity. In this work, the physicist argued for a universe that was static, unchanging, and without origin. Einstein sought to apply his theory of relativity to cosmology, and in doing so created Einstein's model of the static universe. But Dr. Einstein was aware that this would need to be reconciled with the scientific evidence, and in order to explain how the universe could remain constant, unchanging, and eternal, he needed some entity or force to maintain a static universe. He therefore introduced a new force known as the cosmological constant. The physicist attempted to justify his inclusion of this new mystery force in his work, describing,
In order to arrive at this consistent view, we admittedly had to introduce an extension of the field equations of gravitation which is not justified by our actual knowledge of gravitation. It is to be emphasized, however, that a positive curvature of space is given by our results, even if the supplementary term is not introduced. That term is necessary only for the purpose of making possible a quasi-static distribution of matter, as required by the fact of the small velocities of the stars.
Einstein was not alone in his view of a static and eternal universe. Scientists and physicists all across the world believe that the universe had always existed and was unchanging. Matter was all that was, is, and ever shall be. The universe is unchanging and showed no evidence of origin.
The stellar system, as we know it, appears to be a finite collection of stars scattered through a spherical volume, with no marked tendency to expand or contract.
Many great physicists of this age affirmed the Einsteinian model of the static universe and views it as the resolution for the problem of a need for a creator. The universe was viewed as their god, and it was now possible to be an intellectually honest materialist. The devil's greatest victory was convincing the unanimous consensus of physicists that the universe needed no explanation. For years, this view prevailed in academia and was taught as though it had been scientifically proven, until a series of discoveries began to call into question Einstein's model of a static universe. On April 26, 1920, the so called Great Debate was held in the U.S. National Museum between Harlow Shapley and Heber Curtis. This debate was over whether or not the spiral nebula being observed at great distances were actually nebulae in or around our own galaxies, or whether they were in fact their own galaxies. At this point in time, it was presumed that the Milky Way was the only galaxy, and that the supermassive entities we were discovering were in fact nebulae. At the time, the Milky Way galaxy was considered to be the center of the universe, in a view we might today call galactocentrism. Curtis, however, pointed out that there were far more new star formations or nova in the Andromeda Nebula, and that it wouldn't make sense for there to be more nova in Andromeda than in the rest of the galaxy, unless it was actually some other distinct entity. However, the results of this debate proved inconclusive, and the question was still up for debate by astronomers. That was until Edwin Hubble solved the debate in 1923, when Edwin Hubble discovered Cepheid variables in the Andromeda Nebula. Cepheids are a kind of star that pulsates and thus increases and decreases in luminosity over time, in a very predictable pattern. Dr. Hubble used the Leavitt rule for determining the true luminosity of a Cepheid and discovered that the Cepheids in the Andromeda Nebula were 900,000 light years away from Earth. By contrast, the Milky Way was estimated to be 100,000 light years in diameter. The Andromeda Nebula was further away from the Milky Way than the estimated area of our galaxy itself. This was revolutionary and proved that the actual universe was far larger than what anyone had expected. We now know there to be a 2 times 10 to the 11th power of galaxies in our universe. That is over 200 billion galaxies. Scientists were now beginning to realize the true scale of the universe. And what's more is that Hubble confirmed earlier observations that these spiral nebulae were emitting a form of light known as red shift, which meant that they were receding from the Earth. The celestial bodies, which were traditionally referred to as the fixed stars, were in fact moving away from the Earth and were certainly not suspended in one place forever. Ironically, theologians such as Reverend George Leo Haydock had already predicted that the fixed stars were actually in motion centuries before Hubble confirmed this hypothesis. Physicists all throughout the world were in reels over the implication of this, as consistent recession implied that there was a common point the objects were receding from. This was around the time that physicists began to point out that Einstein's equations in the theory of relativity called for no cosmological constant to counterbalance the expansion of the universe. In fact, Einstein's own equations in the theory of relativity proved that the universe could not be eternally static and unchanging, but he had introduced a mysterious force for which he chose the value so as to set the expansion of the universe to zero. It seemed more and more likely that the static universe model purported by Einstein and similar theoretical physicists was quite lacking in its substance and foundation. In 1927, a decade after Einstein's work on the cosmological considerations of relativity came out, Father Georges Lemaitre published his work in French concerning the expansion of the universe and the formation of the Hubble law. The Hubble law formulated as an equation the rate of change for the expansion of the universe, the speed of expansion increasing with distance from the Earth. If analogously we are raisins in a piece of bread and moving further and further away from the other raisins in the same loaf, then there must have been a point where this expansion of the loaf began. And thus, as a theoretical science began proving a dynamic universe, the actual data likewise began to confirm the expansion of the universe. Dr. Hubble confirmed in 1929 the rate of recession of galaxies from Earth and from one another at speeds which are proportional to their distances from one another. Thus, while Father Lemaitre first proved the existence of a formula such as the Hubble law, Dr. Hubble was able to provide a concise equation proving the rate of change for the expansion of the universe. If everything was expanding from everything, then at some point this expansion would have needed to begin, and what is now known as the singularity. In 1931, Father Lemaitre proposed his thesis, the Hypothèse de l'atome primitif, which would later be translated into English, proposing that the universe began in a place referred to as the primordial atom, an infinitely hot, infinitely dense point which marked the beginning of the expansion of the universe, and therefore the actual beginning of the universe itself. In January of 1933, Einstein met with Lemaitre at the California Institute of Technology, where he confessed his problem with the primeval atom was
It suggests too much the theological idea of creation.
Einstein proposed changing the Lemaitrean model so as to avoid causing a singularity, but all of his attempts to mental gymnastics his way around the problem of a singularity failed, so much so that he had no choice but to accept that he was wrong about the cosmological constant and the universe as a whole. Later on, a year after his death, it was reported by the physicist George Gamow.
Einstein remarked to me many years ago that the cosmic repulsion idea was the biggest blunder he had made in his entire life.
In spite of Einstein recanting support of the static universe, they were still not out of the woods as concerning the study of the universe's origins. For a time, the Alexander Friedman model of the oscillating universe, or Big Crunch model, which proposed an infinite number of expansions and contractions as the model for the universe, was being considered. Therefore, the universe could still be eternal as it expands and contracts as though it were breathing in and out into eternity. Einstein and other physicists would eventually come to reject it for violating the second law of thermodynamics. The second law of thermodynamics states that the entropy of an isolated system can only increase or remain constant over time, which also means that the universe can only increase in disorder. The reason that the oscillating model violated this law is that it purported that once entropy had reached its climax, it would then turn inverse and in fact begin to decrease, hence violating thermodynamics. The oscillating universe was therefore dismissed, but succeeding it in opposition to the Big Bang theory was the steady state model, reported by Sir Frederick Hoyle. Fred Hoyle knew the implications of the Big Bang theory if it were true. If the universe had been expanding from some primordial atom, and before this there was no time or space or energy or matter, then there must have been some explanation for where this atom would come from. Why did the universe begin expanding? What caused it to expand?
Have you not known? Have you not heard? Hath it not been told you from the beginning? Have you not understood from the foundations of the earth? It is he that sitteth upon the circle of the earth, and the inhabitants thereof are as grasshoppers, that stretcheth out the heavens as a curtain, and spreadeth them out as a tent to dwell in, that bringeth the princes to nothing. He maketh the judges of the earth as vanity. Yea, they shall not be planted. Yea, they shall not be sown. Yea, their stock shall not take root in the earth. And he shall also blow upon them, and they shall wither, and the whirlwind shall take them away as stubble.
The Holy Scriptures clearly tell us that the heavens are expanding, being spread apart by our Lord, in a manner which seems very similar to how the universe is being expanded from the singularity. Traditional Catholics therefore began to readily accept the theory and saw it as proving the Genesis creation account and an excellent means for apologetics and evangelism concerning atheists and materialists. Hoyle responded to the Big Bang Theory.
The passionate frenzy with which the Big Bang cosmology is clutched to the corporate scientific bosom evidently arises from a deep-rooted attachment to the first page of Genesis, religious fundamentalism at its strongest.
Sir Hoyle developed a counter theory to the Big Bang, which we today know as the steady state model. According to this, the universe was expanding, but this was counterbalanced by the creation of new matter directly proportional to its expansion, so much so that the universe remains static and uncreated with no substantial changes over time. But the problem with this is that the law of conservation of matter states that matter cannot be created or destroyed, but can only be changed. The creation of matter isn't a problem if we affirm an omnipotent, intelligent designer who can work outside of the current laws of physics and matter, but this is a serious problem for an unintelligent and random, eternal, unconscious material universes incapable of generating new matter by definition. But this is only part of an even larger problem. In natural philosophy, there is a principle known as Occam's razor. Simply put, Occam's razor states that the simplest explanation is generally the best one. But the point of Occam's razor isn't to simply dumb down all of our scientific postulates. It's to reduce the number of purely theoretical presuppositions and concepts that need to be made in order to arrive at your conclusion. The Big Bang Theory and steady state model both grant that the universe is expanding. The Big Bang model simply theorizes that all this expansion had to have begun somewhere and from a finite point, which is perfectly consistent with observational science on outward expansion. Therefore, the universe must be expanding from a singular point. The steady state model, on the other hand, requires that we presuppose the perfect cosmological principle. That is, that the universe does not change over time, and that as the universe expands, new matter is created so as to correlate exactly with the expansion of the universe. As you can see, the steady state model requires presuppositions and theoretical postulates to even arrive at the main presuppositions of the theory, whereas the Big Bang model simply requires a basic understanding of the observational data concerning redshift. The steady state, on the other hand, requires an active suspension of the laws of conservation, an introduction of entirely new theoretical postulates that seem to run completely contradictory to the observational and theoretical science. But the steady state model was truly buried with the discovery of the cosmic microwave background by Robert Woodrow Wilson and Arno Allen Pienzas. The CMB is a faint detection of radiation occupying interstellar space, which the steady state model was unable to account for, and this marked a significant problem for Fred Hoyle's model. Not only was there inexplicable radiation, but the radiation was not uniformly distributed in density or heat, with there being hot spots and cold spots alike, proving that the cosmos are not as uniform as what was reported. In fact, it seemed as though there were objective points where one point of the cosmos differed substantially from one another. However, it would be intellectually dishonest for us to use the cosmic microwave background as an argument without mentioning the new challenges to the CMB. The James Webb Space Telescope has discovered fully formed galaxies which are over 13.8 billion light years away, in some cases over 33 billion light years away, in a universe which is allegedly 13.8 billion years old. Not only this, but these galaxies are formed with heavy compounds that shouldn't have even existed at the point in the universe, let alone before the universe. Some astrophysicists are proposing the idea that the cosmic microwave background is being caused by these ancient galaxies and their emission of light across the vacuum of interstellar space. This is a serious question which astrophysicists and the scientific community in general has refused to address, and it causes serious questions concerning the speed of light, age of the universe, and other things which are key to our current science of astrophysics. It could be very well that the current speed of light is not what is purported by our astronomers, and that the universe is far younger than what has been estimated. But I would argue that, even if we grant that the cosmic microwave background is being caused by distant galaxies, the fact that there are entire different regions of hot spots and cold spots still shows that the universe is dynamic and is not randomly static and eternal. Furthermore, our observations of redshift still prove an expanding universe, which leaves materialists in the same ultimate predicament. The universe definitively had a beginning, it is not eternal, and something caused it to originate. The observational evidence shows that some time, which astronomers estimate to be 13.8 billion years ago, all matter, space, time, and energy came into existence. Materialism posits that all that was, is, and ever shall be is matter, space, time, and energy, but there is nothing before the Big Bang, meaning something outside of these postulates must have caused our universe to come into existence. Atheists will object by stating that matter, space, time, and energy did exist before the foundations of the world in the form of the singularity. But this is completely and utterly atrocious when you consider that all the singularity is the first few nanoseconds of the Big Bang. It is the point from which all the universe expanded out from, but it is not eternal. Something had to cause it to come into existence. Something outside of matter, space, time, and energy created this finite space which we know as the universe. And if there is creation, then there must be a creator.
The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament sheweth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night sheweth knowledge. There is no speech nor language, where their voice is not heard. Their line is gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them hath he set a tabernacle for the sun, which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, and rejoiceth as a strong man to run a race. His going forth is from the end of the heaven, and his circuit unto the ends of it, and there is nothing hid from the heat thereof. The law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. The statutes of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of the Lord is pure, enlightening the eyes. The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. The judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. More to be desired are they than gold, yea, than much fine gold, sweeter also than honey and the honeycomb. Moreover by them is thy servant warned, and in keeping of them there is great reward. Who can understand his errors? Cleanse thou me from secret faults. Keep back thy servant also from presumptuous sins. Let them not have dominion over me. Then shall I be upright, and I shall be innocent from the great transgression. Let the words of my mouth, and the meditation of my heart, be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer.
Of all the money that e'er I had, I spent it in good company, and all the harm that e'er I've done, alas, it was to none but me. And all I've done for want of wit, to memory now I can't recall. So fill to me the parting glass. Good night and joy.